Imagine a child, eyes wide open, staring into eternity, but his heart still beats. In the sweltering shadows of 1849 Louisiana, a boy named Daniel lay trapped in his own flesh, alive, yet utterly absent. Doctors fled in terror, whispering of divine judgment. What unholy force stole his soul while his body lingered? Tonight, we unearth the nightmare they buried. In the stifling veil of Louisiana's antebellum twilight, where the Mississippi River coiled like a serpent through the heart of the South, secrets festered deeper than the roots of ancient cypresses. It was 1849, a year when the air hung heavy with the scent of blooming magnolias and rotting mud, when yellow fever whispered death through the humid nights, and when the fractures of a nation, slavery's iron grip, the echoes of war with Mexico, seeped into even the smallest hamlets like poison in the groundwater. Here, in the forgotten bend of Belfontaine, a town clinging to the river's edge like a barnacle on a sunken ship, a medical enigma unfolded that would shatter the souls of 7 physicians, drive 3 to abandon their oaths, and bury a family's legacy under layers of deliberate silence. This was no ordinary illness, it was a haunting, a spectral riddle that blurred the lines between body, spirit, and divine retribution. The Carter child, young Daniel, became the vessel for something inexplicable, a case where science knelt before the unknown, and where guilt, sin, and redemption intertwined like vines choking a forgotten grave. Picture the scene: Belfontaine, a speck on the map 40 miles south of Baton Rouge, population scarce as 300 whispers in the wind. The river dominated everything, its brown waters swollen with silt, carrying flatboats laden with cotton bales that gleamed white under the relentless sun, bound for the markets of New Orleans. The air was a living thing, thick and oppressive, curling the edges of parchment ledgers and beating sweat on brows before dawn had fully broken. Sounds echoed in layers, the low moan of steam whistles from passing paddle wheelers, the rhythmic slap of waves against wooden levees, the distant crack of whips in the fields where enslaved hands toiled under the watchful eyes of overseers. Smells assaulted the senses, the earthy tang of river mud mingling with the sweet decay of overripe fruit, the acrid smoke from blacksmith forges, and the faint, omnipresent rot of fever season, when death hovered like a vulture over low-lying homes. The town's layout was a haphazard sketch of survival, a single main street, rutted with wagon tracks, flanked by weathered buildings that leaned slightly from years of floods. The general store, its shelves stocked with bolts of calico, sacks of flour, and jars of molasses, doubled as a gossip mill where debts were tallied in hushed tones. Next door, the tavern, dim and smoky, with scarred oak tables and the clink of tin mugs, served as confession booth and courtroom for petty disputes. The cotton trading office, a squat brick structure, pulsed with the commerce that kept Belfontaine alive, clerks scribbling furiously in ledgers, planters in starched collars haggling over prices, the air thick with the fibrous dust of bales being weighed and tagged. A blacksmith's hammer rang out like a tolling bell, forging horseshoes and chains that bound both beast and man. And at the edge, the church, a whitewashed Baptist sanctuary with a steeple piercing the sky, preached fire and brimstone on Sundays, its pews filled with families seeking absolution from the sins of prosperity built on human bondage. Homes sprawled outward in irregular clusters, raised on brick pilings to defy the river's wrath. Wooden planks creaked underfoot, paint peeling in the humidity, windows shuttered against the midday glare. Gardens bloomed defiantly with okra, tomatoes, and beans, while chickens scratched in coops, their clucks a mundane counterpoint to the river's eternal rush. This was a place of rhythms, spring's hopeful planting, summer's suffocating dread of disease, autumn's frantic harvest, winter's uneasy respite. But beneath the surface simmered unspoken tensions, the moral chasm between Baptist sermons decrying vice and the Catholic whispers from a modest chapel on the southern fringe, the debates over slavery's expansion into new territories that divided neighbors like a fault line. Trust was fragile as Spanish moss, words were weapons, and silence a shield. In this crucible of heat, commerce, and hidden fractures, the Carter family etched out an existence that seemed as unremarkable as the river's daily tide, until it wasn't. Thomas Carter, 34, was a man carved from the town's quiet necessities. Thin-framed, with receding dark hair and wire-rimmed spectacles perched on a sharp nose, he served as clerk at the Belfontaine Cotton Exchange. His days were a liturgy of precision, balancing ledgers with ink-stained fingers, recording the weight of bales in neat columns, calculating tariffs and profits with the chew of a quill end between his teeth. It was steady labor, paying in modest silver that kept hunger at bay but dreams deferred. Thomas carried himself with a solemn gravity, his voice low and measured, as if every utterance bore the weight of accountability. He harbored private doubts about the world's cruelties, the lash marks on enslaved workers he glimpsed at the docks, the sermons that justified bondage as divine order, but he voiced them only in the dead of night, to the ceiling beams of his home, lest they unravel the fragile peace of his life. His wife, Margaret, 31, was the hearth's quiet guardian. Born in Belfontaine to a ferryman lost to the river's depths when she was 12, she learned resilience from her widowed mother, stitching survival from scraps. By 19, when she wed Thomas, her needlework had become legend among the parish's elite, mending fine linens, altering silk gowns with invisible seams, crafting heirloom quilts embroidered with floral motifs that whispered of Eden's lost beauty. Her sewing room was a sanctuary, bolts of fabric stacked like sacred scrolls, threads in rainbow hues, and a treadle sewing machine, a rare marvel imported from the north, its rhythmic hum a counterpoint to the river's sigh. Margaret's hands, calloused yet graceful, moved with a dancer's precision, each stitch a prayer for stability in a world of floods and fevers. She was a woman of deep faith, her Bible worn from nightly readings, finding solace in verses of redemption amid the moral ambiguities of their era. Their children completed the portrait. Charlotte, 12, mirrored her father's solemnity, dark-haired, watchful, assisting with hems and hems while minding her siblings with a maturity beyond her years. And, 9, was the spark, curious eyes darting like fireflies, forever slipping away to chase dragonflies along the muddy banks or whisper secrets to the windswept woods. And then Daniel, 6, the enigma wrapped in fragility. Pale as moonlight on water, with hair like spun flax and eyes that held depths unspoken, he was no robust adventurer. He tired swiftly, shunning the rough tumble of dockside boys for quieter pursuits, arranging river-smooth stones in intricate mandalas on the porch, their patterns evoking ancient runes or biblical altars, watching his mother's needleweave magic, his gaze intense as if deciphering divine code. Daniel spoke sparingly, each word a polished gem, thoughtful and sparse. Margaret fretted over his delicacy, sensing shadows in his pallor, but Thomas dismissed it with paternal optimism. He's thoughtful, is all. The world needs thinkers, not just doers. In their eyes, he was a gentle soul, perhaps touched by angels, or, as fate would reveal, something far more ominous. The Carter abode stood sentinel on the town's eastern fringe, near enough to the levee that the steamer's whistles pierced dreams like spectral calls. A modest wooden frame, 4 rooms huddled together, the main space where iron pots simmered over a hearth, filling the air with the aroma of grits and stewed greens, 2 cramped bedrooms, beds draped in mosquito netting like ghostly shrouds, Margaret's sewing nook, lit by flickering oil lamps that cast elongated shadows on walls adorned with samplers quoting psalms, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. A vegetable patch yielded humble bounties, chickens provided eggs, a neighbor's cow milk. It was a life threaded with simplicity, church bells summoning them on Sundays, debts settled promptly, neighbors greeted with nods but little more. They were the invisible backbone of Belfontaine, until Daniel's affliction tore the veil, exposing the family's quiet existence to the glare of medical scrutiny and spiritual dread. Enter Dr. Nathaniel Geesham, the town's lone bulwark against mortality. At 47, he was a figure of austere authority, tall, gaunt, with salt and pepper hair cropped short and a gaze sharpened by years of peering into the abyss of human frailty. A graduate of New Orleans Medical College, he had planted roots in Belfontaine 15 years prior, drawn by the need for a healer in this fever-prone outpost. His practice occupied a clapboard edifice rented from a shrewd merchant, a single examination room with a scarred oak table padded thinly, shelves groaning under jars of leeches, laudanum, and mercury compounds, a cramped office where leather-bound journals chronicled cases in meticulous script, a storage nook for herbs and elixirs. Gisham's tools were relics of an era teetering on enlightenment, scalpels glinting coldly, forceps for extracting teeth or bullets, a rudimentary stethoscope, cupping glasses for bloodletting, a ritual as ancient as sin, drawing out bad humors in crimson streams. His library, sparse but revered, included Benjamin Rush's treatises on fevers, European case studies on cholera, and faded volumes debating the soul's role in bodily decay. Medicine in 1849 was a shadowy art, shrouded in mystery, humors imbalanced by miasmas from the swamps, treatments like calomel purges that ravaged as much as they remedied. Germs were whispers from the future, anesthesia a nascent dream. Geesham navigated this with conservative wisdom, honest about limits, compassionate in defeat. He had birthed babies in blood-soaked beds, set bones amid screams, lanced boils, and pronounced last rites over cholera victims whose skin turned blue as twilight. Seasons dictated his battles, summer's yellow jack, winter's consumption. A bachelor, he dwelt in Spartan rooms above his office, life entwined with duty, irregular church attendance more social than spiritual, letters to distant colleagues seeking counsel on enigmas. Respected, if not beloved, he embodied the town's fragile hope against the inevitable. Yet nothing, no textbook, no prior horror, prepared him for Daniel Carter, a case that would echo biblical plagues, where the body became a prison for the soul, hinting at divine wrath or ancestral sin unatoned. June 14 dawned merciless, the sun a blazing eye in a cloudless vault, heat shimmering off the river like a mirage of hellfire. Margaret rose at cockcrow, her apron dusted with flour as she stirred grits over the hearth's embers, the wooden spoon scraping rhythmically against iron. Thomas had departed at first light for the exchange, inventory ledgers calling like duty's chain. Charlotte Ann slumbered in tangled sheets, breaths soft as sighs. Then, footsteps, faint, unnatural. Margaret turned, heart skipping like a stone on water. Daniel stood in the doorway, nightshirt rumpled, feet bare on splintered planks. But his stance, unnatural. Arms limp as wilted reeds, eyes open yet vacant, fixed on some invisible horizon. No blink, no twitch, no spark of recognition. Daniel? Her voice, a tentative thread. No response. The pot forgotten, she approached, pulse thundering. Sweetheart, can you hear Mama? Silence, profound as a grave. Kneeling, hands on his shoulders, heat. Searing, as if he'd embraced a forge. She recoiled, then pressed palm to forehead, fever radiating like brimstone, waves of infernal warmth. Panic clawed her throat. Thomas. Forgetting his absence. Charlotte. Quick. Charlotte emerged, sleep-mussed, freezing at the sight. Mama? What's wrong with him? Fetch your father. Run to the exchange. Tell him Daniel's ill. Hurry, child. Bare feet pounded porch, door slamming like judgment's gavel. Margaret scooped Daniel up, rigid as carved marble, unyielding, and bore him to bed. Laid flat, he remained statue-still, arms pinned, eyes ceiling-bound. Cool cloths from basin, wrung and placed, they warmed instantly, steam rising faintly. Time stretched, viscous as molasses. Thomas burst in, face ashen, Charlotte trailing. One glance, I'll get Geesham. The doctor arrived before noon, black bag swinging like a pendulum of fate. Calm efficiency masked inner calculations, pulse checked, rapid, steady, heart auscultated, normal thrum, eyes inspected, pupils contracting to light, reflexes tapped, no jerk. Temperature soared, perhaps 104, skin flushed crimson. But the vacancy, eyes open, awake, yet no flicker to voice or touch. How long like this? This morning. Standing there, frozen. No words, no movement. Geesham probed limbs, tense, locked, not death's rigor but a living paralysis, muscles coiled like springs divine. Fevers can delirium bring, confusion. But this, unresponsiveness while alert? Unknown territory. What afflicts him? Thomas's voice cracked, guilt shadowing, had he dismissed the boy's frailty too lightly? Perhaps infection, nervous malady. Monitor. Willow bark tincture for heat, cool cloths, fluids if possible. I'll return tomorrow. But dawn of June 15 brought horrors amplified. Margaret, vigil-worn, eyes hollow as sockets, greeted Geesham, no change. Not a stir. But something worse. In the dim room, Daniel lay unchanged, yet transformed. Body rigid as iron, joints fused, muscles petrified. Skin waxy, dry as parchment scripture. Eyes stared, unblinking, untracking, yet pupils danced to candle flame. Eyelid forced shut? It crept open, slow as dawn's betrayal. Stethoscope pressed, heartbeats, languid, 40 per minute, a dirge where vitality should race. Is he departing us? Margaret whispered, faith fracturing. Alive, by breath and beat. But this catatonia defies all. Treatments unleashed, purgative swallowed force drop by drop, no purge. Cupping glasses heated, skin blistering red, no flinch. Compresses hot and cold, mustard plasters stinging, oblivion. By dusk, Geesham retreated, dread coiling in his gut like river eels. Instructions left like talismans: watch, hydrate, pray. That night, in lamplights flicker, Gisham's journal trembled, June 15, 1849. Daniel Carter, 6. Rigidity absolute, stimuli ignored, fever infernal. Pulse sluggish as sins creep. Awake yet absent, soul fled, body chained? Explanation eludes, divine hand suspected? As days blurred into a fever-dream vigil, whispers spread through Belfontaine like swamp mist. Neighbors crossed themselves at the Carters' door, murmuring of curses. Perhaps Thomas's unspoken abolitionist leanings angered the Almighty, or Margaret's needle pricked forbidden patterns. The river carried rumors downstream, but the truth deepened. Daniel's eyes, once thoughtful, now portals to void, his breath, shallow sighs echoing psalms of abandonment. Gisham consulted tomes, penned frantic letters, but answers evaded, as if God withheld mercy for some buried transgression. The family's world contracted to that room, Margaret's hands raw from cloths, Thomas's ledgers neglected, sisters hushed in fear. Charlotte prayed verses of resurrection, and wept for her playmate lost. Meals uneaten, sleep fractured by imagined twitches. And Daniel? Suspended between realms, a living effigy of innocence punished, symbol of humanity's fall, where body betrays spirit, and redemption hangs by threadbare faith. Yet this was mere prelude. As weeks stretched, symptoms evolved into abominations, skin paling to translucence, veins mapping like rivers of judgment, breaths so sparse, one counted minutes between. Gisham summoned colleagues, first from Baton Rouge, then New Orleans. Each arriving with hubris, departing shattered. One, a devout Catholic, muttered of demonic possession, crossing himself. Another, a skeptic, fled to academia, renouncing practice. 3 quit medicine altogether, haunted by nightmares of the boy who died awake. Historian whispers reveal deeper layers. 1849's cholera epidemics masked stranger cases, but Daniel's stood singular. Biblical echoes abound, Lazarus reversed, alive yet entombed, Job's trials in miniature, testing parental faith. Psychological undercurrents, guilt's paralysis, sin's fever. The Carters, ordinary sinners, became unwilling prophets of divine mystery. Files vanished, witnesses silenced, families relocating under aliases, journals burned. Why? Fear of contagion, spiritual or literal, shame of science's failure, or deeper, a collective burial of truths too chilling. Tonight, we resurrect them, piecing shards into mosaic, a tale of empathy for the afflicted, dread of the inexplicable, curiosity for buried pasts, reflection on souls adrift. In the oppressive shroud of Belfontaine's summer haze, where the Mississippi's murky waters mirrored the town's unspoken sins, the affliction of young Daniel Carter deepened into a spectral ordeal that tested the boundaries of medicine, faith, and the human spirit. By the third dawn of his torment, June 16, 1849, whispers slithered through the cotton-dusted streets like serpents in Eden's undergrowth. In a hamlet of scarcely 300 souls, bound by the river's relentless flow and the chains of commerce, news of the boy's condition spread not as mere gossip, but as a chilling omen, evoking biblical plagues where the innocent bore the weight of collective guilt. The air, thick with the metallic tang of impending rain and the fetid breath of swamp decay, carried theories from porch to pulpit, riverborne miasmas poisoning the pure, divine retribution for the town's complicity in slavery's moral rot, or darker still, a curse woven from ancestral shadows, punishing the Carters for some unconfessed transgression. These murmurs built a wall of isolation around the family home, where silence reigned like a judgmental deity, amplifying the dread that clawed at every heart. Reverend William Holloway, the Baptist shepherd of Belfontaine's flock, embodied the town's spiritual armor, a towering figure with graying locks and a voice that thundered damnation from the pulpit, rallying souls against the temptations of rum-soaked taverns and the seductive pull of Catholic rites from the Southern Chapel. Yet on June 17, as he crossed the Carter threshold, his booming presence shrank before the boy's bed. Daniel lay there, a fragile icon of innocence corrupted, skin flushed yet waxy, limbs locked in unnatural rigor, eyes, those once thoughtful pools, now vacant abysses staring ceilingward, unblinking as if witnessing heavenly judgment. The room reeked of fever sweat and herbal poultices, the dim light from a single oil lamp casting elongated shadows that danced like accusing specters on the walls. Holloway's hands, calloused from years of gesturing toward salvation, trembled as he laid them upon the child's forehead, invoking psalms of deliverance. "Yeah, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil." But his voice cracked, betraying the fracture in his faith, for what divine purpose could justify this? A child, pale as the shroud of Lazarus, trapped in living limbo, his silence a sermon on the inscrutability of God's wrath. "The Lord tests us," he murmured to Margaret and Thomas, his eyes avoiding theirs, "to forge our souls in fire. Hold to redemption's promise." But as he departed, the Reverend's steps faltered on the porch, his mind haunted by visions of Job's afflictions, wondering if this was not trial, but condemnation for the town's hidden hypocrisies, the cotton wealth stained by enslaved blood, the sermons preaching equality in heaven while endorsing chains on earth. Margaret Carter, once the steady thread binding her family's tapestry, unraveled under the vigil's weight. For 3 relentless days, she had anchored herself beside Daniel's bed, her world contracting to the rhythm of his shallow breaths, faint rasps like whispers from the grave. Sleep evaded her, snatched in fitful moments where nightmares blended with reality, visions of her son wandering lost in spiritual wilderness, calling out but unheard. Her hands, skilled in stitching beauty from fabric, now performed a futile rite, dipping cloths in basin water cooled by river stones, wringing them with mechanical precision, pressing them to his scorching brow only to feel the heat reclaim them instants later. The cloth steamed faintly, a mocking exhalation. She had forsaken meals, her frame thinning to skeletal sharpness, cheeks hollowed as if grief carved her from within. Thomas, standing sentinel by the window's grimy pane, gazed at the bustling street below, wagons rumbling over ruts, dock workers heaving bales with sweat. Glistened backs, yet saw nothing but his son's frozen form reflected in the glass. He clung to routine, venturing to the cotton exchange for scan hours, fingers fumbling ledgers, ink blots marring columns like tears on parchment. His supervisor's reprimands, "Carter, your mind's adrift, errors like these cost fortunes," echoed his inner torment, a guilt that gnawed. Had his quiet doubts about slavery's sin invited this divine scourge? The house, once alive with children's laughter and the hum of Margaret's sewing machine, now echoed with absence. Charlotte and Anne, dispatched to an aunt's farm 3 miles distant, left voids in the air, their shared bed rumpled but empty, toys scattered like forgotten prayers. Margaret's insistence, "They shan't witness this shadow, let them remember him whole." But the silence amplified everything, the creak of floorboards under weary feet, the distant river's murmur mocking life's flow, the family's faith fraying like overworked thread. Dr. Nathaniel Geesham, the town's medical sentinel, intensified his guardianship, visiting at dawn's blush and dusk's descent, his black bag a talisman against the unknown. Each examination was a ritual of desperation, thermometer pressed to underarm, revealing fevers that hovered infernal at 103 degrees, pulse counted under fingertips, sluggish as a penitent's confession, respirations timed by pocket watch, sparse and labored. Limbs probed for any yield in their iron rigidity, none. Reflexes hammered with mallet, silence. Eyes scrutinized, pupils contracting to lamplight yet tracking nothing, as if the soul had fled, leaving sentinels behind. Gisham's arsenal depleted, quinine bitters swallowed drop by drop, mercury salves rubbed into skin that absorbed them without protest, opium tinctures dripped onto tongue in hopes of stirring the dormant mind. No twitch, no groan, no salvation. His journal entries, once precise scripts, devolved into frantic scrawls. June 18, rigidity absolute, as stone from Pharaoh's tomb. Fever unyielding, heart a dirge at 38 beats. No response to stimuli, pinprick, shout, caress. This defies humoral balance, defies reason. Is this divine intervention a modern cataleptic parable? Prognosis, veiled in mystery's shroud. By June 20, 6 days etched in eternal vigil, Geesham conceded defeat's edge. Alone in his office, lamplight pooling like spilled oil, he penned missives to New Orleans kin, urgent pleas etched on parchment, sealed with wax-trembling hands. Colleagues, a case unparalleled, child rigid, unresponsive, vital yet vacant. Advise forthwith. Dispatched on the next steamer, plumes of smoke trailing like omens upriver. Unbeknownst, one recipient, Dr. Claude Fontaine, would heed the call with unearthly haste, his past shadowed by similar phantoms. Fontaine's arrival on June 22 cleaved the humid air like a scalpel. 52, wiry as river reeds, with silver mane and eyes dark as bayou depths, he exuded Parisian polish amid Belfontaine's rustic grit, accent lilting like forbidden incantations, lips pursed in contemplation as if savoring esoteric truths. A New Orleans luminary, versed in tropical terrors, yellow fever's jaundice kiss, dengue's bone-crushing ache, cholera's watery demise, parasites burrowing like sins into flesh. His practice catered to the elite, fees as steep as his insights. Alighting the dock, valise in hand, he met Gisham's astonished gaze. "Your letter, but days old, how?" Fontaine's reply, cryptic, "The symptoms, echo ghosts I've chased. Lead me to the vessel." The Carter home, now a shrine of suffering, welcomed him into Daniel's chamber. Sunlight slanted through shutters, motes dancing like restless spirits. Fontaine's case unfolded revelations, tensiometers gauging muscles' unyielding grip, calibrated pins pricking for sensations ghost, ophthalmoscope peering into ocular voids, calipers mapping unyielding joints. 2 hours stretched eternal, measurements murmured, notes scratched in elegant script. Margaret and Thomas hovered doorway-bound, breaths held like prayers. Gisham assisted, querying tools' arcane purposes. Outside, life pulsed indifferent, steamboat whistles wailing, vendors hawking wares, enslaved figures toiling under sun's lash. Inside, time petrified. Concluding, Fontaine's face etched grave lines. Privately, he intoned to Gisham. In the doctor's office, door barred against eavesdroppers, water poured with deliberate slowness. 7 years passed, Port-au-Prince, Fontaine confessed, voice a confessional whisper. A boy, akin in torment, rigidity's cage, unresponsiveness's void, hearts languid him, fever's sourceless blaze. Locals whispered voodoo curses, plant poisons from shadowed groves. Gisham leaned forward, his fate? Silence, heavy as judgment. 19 days encased, then stirrings, digits twitching like resurrection's dawn. Mobility returned, yet altered. How so? Amnesia of kin, muteness eternal, terrors at shadows, personality erased, a husk where soul once dwelled. 3 days more, and cessation, no sustenance, no motion, life's flame extinguished as if divine whim revoked. Autopsy yielded naught, organs pristine, no toxin, no invader. Fontaine's theory, whispered heresy, nervous schism, mind's conscious helm severed from body's autopilot. Breath persists, heart tolls, but intelligence, adrift. Adrift where? Gisham pressed, chill prickling spine despite swelter. Imprisoned within, or beyond. A catatonic exile, perhaps punishment for unseen sins, a biblical wandering in wilderness. Dismissal tempted Gisham, schooled in empirical anchors, yet Daniel's enigma loomed undeniable. Recommendation, vigilance, sustenance forced, broth stripped, lest body wither. Brace kin for loss, or return of a stranger, soul scarred by abyss. Subscription call, emotional pause, voice softening. If these echoes of forgotten anguish stir your soul, subscribe, unearth more with us. Like if dread grips you, share with kindred spirits. Comment, what spectral tales haunt your lineage? Belfontaine transformed under the case's shadow, a magnet for medical pilgrims drawn by whispers through Louisiana's veins. Curiosity, ambition, desperation converged on the Carter threshold, each visitor a fleeting hope dashed against reality's rock. Dr. Samuel Vickery, July 3 RD's boisterous intruder, rotund, 60ish, clad in finery belying charlatan roots, proclaimed expertise with whiskey-scented breath. Miasmic nervous fever, riverborne, cured a dozen. Examination cursory, verdict swift. Gisham and Fontaine, now steadfast guardians, eyed warily. Treatment, purgatives potent as hellfire, cups heated to blistering, secret tonic reeking of spirits and deceit. Administered, bowels unmoved, skin bruised purple yet unflinching, tonic pooled, nearly choking the inert form. Margaret's scream pierced, enough. Thomas's fury, out, imposter. Vickery fled, later unmasked, no training, reputation smoke and mirrors. Yet his debacle deepened the aura of invincibility around Daniel's curse, hinting at supernatural barriers no quack could breach. Dr. Enoch Landry, July 10 from Lafayette, youthful 30s, Boston honed in neurology, brought science's gleam, galvanometer tracing phantom currents in muscles, tuning forks vibrating for reflex ghosts, stimuli catalogued meticulously. 3 days of probes yielded, voluntary nerves silenced, autonomic endures, disconnection profound as soul from sinner. Literature echoed partial parallels, but none this absolute. Treatment? Elusive as grace for the unrepentant. Sobering, his departure left echoes of Job's unanswered pleas. Dr. Marguerite Dufresne, July 15 from Alexandria, rare female healer, credentials forged in Philadelphia's halls, papers on pediatric plagues, stirred Belfontaine's conservative undercurrents. Unfazed, she delved not into flesh but psyche, interrogating Margaret and Thomas on Daniel's essence. His joys? Fears? Omens prior? Revelations poured, nightmares unspoken, thunder's terror, cellar's gloom, drowned boys' river bend haunting, stone patterns like mystic sigils. Dufresne's hypothesis, debated till midnight with peers: psychic fracture, trauma's retreat, mind barricading body as fortress against dread. Hysteria's extreme, dissociation complete, manifestation of buried guilt or divine mirror to family's unspoken sins. Objections flew, impossible. Yet precedents lingered, hysterical ailments defying anatomy. Her report swelled the dossier, a testament to mind's dominion, but hope remained spectral. By late July, 6 weeks entombed in flesh, the Carter sanctum reeked of despair's incense, visited by a procession of healers, each raising then raising expectations. Margaret, gaunt apparition, abandoned sowing solace, vigil unbroken, narratives woven aloud, lullabies crooned, pleas for awakening, Charlotte's birthday dawns, wake for her, my lamb. Thomas, ledger-bound yet fractured, tasks bundled under guilt's yoke, my silences on injustice, did they summon this? Daniel, unchanged yet evolving subtly, skin paling to ethereal translucence, veins etching blue judgments, breaths so rare one feared eternal pause. Nourishment forced, broths funneled, sustaining the shell for potential redemption. Whispers swelled, townfolk crossing paths, murmuring exorcisms, avoiding the cursed abode. Fontaine and Geesham, bonded in bewilderment, pondered nightly, was this biblical possession, soul harvested by reaper unseen? Or science's frontier, where mind's abyss mirrored God's enigmas? As August loomed, fevers waxed, rigidity held, a living parable of endurance amid damnation. Families fled whispers, renaming lineages to escape stigma. Records interred deeper than Daniel's potential grave, lest truth ignite spiritual inferno. Yet in this crucible, themes crystallized: empathy for the afflicted, dread of the unfathomable, curiosity for veiled histories, reflection on sin's legacies. The Carter Saga, a chilling testament to divine justice's whisper, or humanity's hubris in facing the void. In the waning light of Belfontaine's relentless summer, where the Mississippi's sluggish currents mirrored the town's stagnating spirit, the Carter family's ordeal morphed into a harrowing testament to the fragility of the soul and the inexorable grip of divine mystery. By early August 1849, as the air thickened with the scent of wilting magnolias and the acrid smoke of distant field burns, Thomas Carter navigated his days like a ghost haunting his own life. His once precise hands, inked from ledger work, now trembled as he performed rote tasks at the cotton exchange, stacking bales with mechanical detachment, his gaze distant, unfocused, as if peering into the abyss where his son's consciousness had vanished. At home, the wooden floors creaked under his weary pacing, the main room's hearth flickering low, casting jagged shadows that danced like accusing fingers. Nights found him slumped in a worn armchair, bottle of whiskey pilfered from hidden stashes behind the woodpile, its burn a fleeting balm against the gnawing guilt, had his unspoken reservations about the South's moral decay, the chains clanking at the docks, the sermons justifying bondage as God's order, invited this celestial punishment? The liquid fire seared his throat, but it couldn't drown the silence that had invaded their home, a palpable entity heavier than the humid air, symbolizing the family's fall from grace, a modern echo of Adam's expulsion where innocence was the first casualty. Margaret, the unyielding sentinel, had become a spectral figure herself, her once vibrant eyes sunken into hollows rimmed with exhaustion, skin pallid as the moonlit riverbanks, hands raw from endless vigils. She moved through the house like a penitent in pilgrimage, her sewing room abandoned, bolts of fabric gathering dust like forgotten shrouds, the machine's pedal silent as a confessional booth after absolution's denial. The community's initial whispers of sympathy had curdled into a venomous brew of fear and judgment, as if the Carters bore a mark of Cain, their affliction a contagion of the spirit. Neighbors, once exchanging nods over garden fences, now averted gazes, crossing rutted streets with hurried steps, their excuses thin as river mist when Margaret's notes pleaded for aid: a loaf of bread, a pail of milk, a moment's respite. Murmurs in the general store painted the family as cursed, perhaps divine retribution for Thomas's quiet abolitionist leanings or Margaret's Bible samplers that dared question earthly injustices. The boy's a vessel for wrath, they'd hiss, invoking Job's trials or the plagues of Egypt, where the innocent suffered for the sins of the many. This isolation deepened the Carters' despair, their home a fortress against the world's scorn, windows shuttered against prying eyes, the levee's steam whistles mocking their entrapment. The tension erupted one sweltering August night, when a knot of men, emboldened by tavern whiskey and primal dread, congregated outside the Carter abode like a jury of shadows. Their voices boomed through the humid veil, laced with false bravado. Unnatural, that's what it is, boy lion, they're like the dead but breathin'. God's will, maybe, to let him go. Mercy in release. Lantern light flickered on their weathered faces, casting grotesque masks, the air thick with tobacco smoke and unspoken accusations. Thomas, roused from his stupor, burst forth, his frame, lean and wired with fury, confronting the mob. Leave us be. You've no right. Words escalated to blows, fists landing with sickening thuds on ribs that cracked like dry branches, a cheekbone fracturing with a sharp snap that echoed biblical smitings. Blood trickled warm and metallic down his face, mingling with sweat, as he crumpled to the dirt, the men's boots retreating into the night like fleeing demons. Geesham tended him in the dim practice, binding wounds with linen strips, but the scars etched deeper, a fracture in Thomas's spirit, symbolizing the community's betrayal, a collective sin of abandonment that mirrored Judas's kiss. Work ceased, income evaporated like morning dew under the sun's glare. Charity trickled from a dwindling few, a basket of vegetables from the aunt's farm, coins from the reverend's collection plate, but it tasted of pity, bitter as gall, underscoring their descent into beggary, a humbling reminiscent of the prodigal son's trough. Dr. Gisham's visits persisted, a daily rite in the fading light of hope. His steps on the porch announced him, black bag thumping like a heartbeat's echo. Vital checks became liturgy, stethoscope cold against Daniel's chest, counting the sluggish pulse, 38 to 42 beats, a dirge for lost vitality, thermometer revealing fever stable yet infernal, probes for reflexes yielding naught but rigidity's defiance. No new elixirs, the arsenal exhausted, willow bark, mercury, opium, all futile as prayers to indifferent heavens. His journals, leather-bound confessors, revealed a soul in torment, August 7, day 54. Unaltered, pulse languid as a sinner's repentance, heat unquenched. No stir, no sense. Texts consulted, letters dispatched nationwide, silence mocks. Must concede, realms beyond medicine's grasp, where body endures sans soul's spark. Is this life? Or limbo's cruel jest, testing faith's limits? Helplessness corrodes, colleagues' flight comprehensible. The entries bled doubt, Geesham grappling with medicine's hubris, akin to Icarus's fall, where ambition met divine boundaries, pondering if Daniel's state was purgatory incarnate, a child's innocence sacrificed on altars of unknown transgressions. Then, on August 19, th's midnight veil, as the house sighed with settling timbers and a distant steamboat's whistle wailed like a banshee's lament, change pierced the stasis. Margaret, humming a cradle song, soft notes weaving through the room's stale air, scented with fever and despair, halted midverse. Daniel's eyes, long vacant portals to void, now darted subtly. Tracking phantoms unseen, left to right like a dreamer pursued. Lamplight caught the motion, shadows leaping. Daniel? Her whisper, fragile as spun glass. His gaze shifted, locking on her face, recognition flickering like a candle in wind, the first in 66 days of exile. Heart pounding, she grasped his hand, rigid yet, alive with new tension. Fingers twitched, minuscule, electric, a spark of resurrection. Chair clattering backward, she cried, Thomas. He's stirring. Thomas stumbled in, whiskey-fogged, eyes widening. They stared, eternity compressed. Then, Daniel's right hand rose, trembling violently, hovering as if defying gravity's chains, a biblical lifting like Lazarus's emergence, before collapsing. Thomas bolted into the night, boots pounding dirt streets, fist hammering Gisham's door until the doctor emerged, rumpled, lantern in hand. Movement. Come. Back in the chamber, Margaret knelt, tears carving rivulets down cheeks. Daniel's head pivoted slowly, hands clenching unclenching in rhythmic spasms, muscles awakening from slumber. Gisham's examination, pulse quickening slightly, rigidity fracturing like ice under spring thaw, eyes now alert, tracking shadows. Mouth gaped soundlessly, attempts at voice. Miraculous, Geesham breathed, voice quivering with awe. Paralysis yields, after eons, return. Incomprehensible, yet, redemption? Over 3 days, mobility bloomed, fingers flexing like tentative prayers, limbs stirring, torso shifting. By the 22nd, assisted sitting, 23rd, wobbling stance, 24th, faltering steps, supported by arms like crutches of faith. Fever shattered, skin cooling to mortal touch. Yet, as body revived, spirit revealed fractures profound. This Daniel was a stranger in familiar flesh, a changeling from folklore or scripture's warnings of souls altered by divine trials. The transformation chilled, muteness absolute, stares blank as if language erased, recoiling from embraces. Thomas's hug met with terror, as if kin were apparitions. Hours frozen, fixated on walls or palms, perhaps divining patterns in veins like maps to lost realms. Sleep shunned beds for corners gloom, curled fetal under tables, seeking shadows as refuge from unseen watchers, biblical echoes of David's cave hiding from Saul's wrath, or Jonah's whale-belly exile. Geesham, confounded, physical mending, reflexes normalized, yet psyche absent, a vessel emptied. Fontaine, lingering sentinel, probed with gestures, sketches, not. Locked within, he murmured, eyes shadowed by Haitian ghosts. August 26, Margaret beside him, sunlight filtering through cracks like hesitant grace. Daniel's rasp, they were always there. Chill descended, room's air thickening. Who, darling? Recognition flashed, her son, briefly, then vanished. Watching. Always watching. Silence reclaimed him for days, words hanging like prophecies, evoking revelations, eyes everywhere, divine surveillance or demonic gaze, symbolizing humanity's nakedness before judgment. Dr. Herbert Lane, September's arrival from New Orleans, mind's maladies his domain, schooled in Europe's nascent psychologies, observed a week, behaviors catalogued, therapies attempted. Verdict, trauma etched deep, source veiled, witness to unspeakable, mind retreating as fortress. But what horror! Margaret pleaded. Nightmares mild, life gentle. Lane, child's psyche fragile, perhaps awareness during paralysis, trapped, sentient tomb for months, devastation akin to hell's preview. Thomas paled, imprisoned awake? Possible. Unknowable abyss. September ushered decline's shadow, movement granted, yet wasting inward, food spooned like infants, yet weight plummeted, skin graying as ash, eyes retreating into skull's caverns, hair shedding like autumn leaves. Phrases echoed, watching, never left, waiting. Agitation flared at probing flails, guttural cries, violence born of terror. Homa jail, Margaret chained to bedside, Thomas adrift in inertia. Charity waned, communities. Patience frayed, viewing Carters as harbingers of doom. Fontaine's departure, September 5, private with Geesham. Haitian boy, omitted truth, pre-death mutterings, they never stop watching, even closed eyes. 3 days, gone. Parallels chilled, identical whispers. They journeyed somewhere, Fontaine confided. Consciousness adrift, beholding terrors indelible. Not medicine, mystery's realm, unnamed horrors. He vanished downriver, spectre fleeing. Daniel ceased sustenance early September, offerings rejected, form skeletal, translucent skin veining blue judgments. Geesham recognized death's heralds, breaths shallowing, pulse fading, preparing parents for loss, words hollow as tombs. September 12, Daniel's clarity pierced fog. Mama. Tears flooded, hands clasped. Far away, couldn't return. Home now. Eyes closing, still watching, never stop. Last words, coherent as farewell prophecy. 3 days drifting, consciousness ebbing, breaths whispers. Margaret's vigil unbroken, songs and stories her litany. Death claimed him September 15, dawn's light gilding the room, breath ceased, peaceful as surrender. No cry from Margaret, stoic hold, denial's veil. Thomas pried her gently, Geesham confirmed, heart heavy. Autopsy's controversy, Gisham's plea for knowledge, answers amid void. Carter's relented, conditions ironclad, private, respectful, findings guarded. September 16, Landry, Dufresne witnessing in examination room's sterile chill, tools glinting under lamplight. Incisions revealed enigma, organs pristine, heart robust, lungs clear, viscera unmarred, brain flawless sans lesion or bleed. Impossible, Landry breathed. No ailments trace. Dufresne noted anomaly, muscles atrophied erratically, some weathered as decades unused, neighbors intact, pattern chaotic as sin's whims. Samples preserved, later analyses, cells aged prematurely, structures defying norms. Gisham's report, no anatomical cause, organs hale. Atrophy minor, insufficient for symptoms. Death's origin, enigma. Consensus, bafflement profound, case transcending science, hinting spiritual realms where souls wander, watchers eternal, redemption elusive. Subscription call, poignant pause. If this tale of shadowed souls resonates, subscribe, delve deeper into history's voids. Like for the chills, share with seekers of truth. Comment, what watchers haunt your dreams? As Belfontaine's river flowed indifferent, Carter's legacy buried, files vanished, whispers silenced, a chilling parable lingered, guilt's paralysis, sin's fever, justice's gaze unblinking. As the first cool breaths of autumn swept through Belfontaine in late September 1849, the Mississippi's waters carried away the summer's feverish heat, but not the pall that had settled over the Carter home. Daniel's passing on the 15th left a void deeper than any grave, a silence where a child's breath had once been the fragile rhythm of hope. The room where he had lain for months, rigid yet breathing, now echoed with absence, the bed stripped bare, the basin of cooling cloths emptied, the air still faintly scented with willow bark and despair. Margaret sat motionless in the dim light filtering through shuttered windows, her hands folded in her lap like a statue carved from grief, eyes fixed on the spot where her son's form had finally stilled. Thomas moved through the house like a man condemned, his steps heavy, his voice reduced to murmurs of necessity. The family, once woven tight by routine and quiet faith, unraveled thread by thread under the weight of what medicine could not name. The immediate shadow fell on the death certificate, a bureaucratic ritual in 1849 Louisiana that demanded a cause, lest the departed linger in limbo on parish ledgers. Dr. Geesham, ever the dutiful chronicler, faced an impasse unprecedented in his career. No fever's signature scorched the organs, no infections rot-marred the tissues, no structural betrayal in brain or heart explained the cessation. He penned letters to the 6 other physicians who had peered into Daniel's enigma, Fontaine in New Orleans, Vickery vanished into obscurity, Lane from Boston's neurological frontiers, Landry and Dufresne lingering witnesses to the autopsy's sterile revelations. Their responses trickled back like reluctant confessions. Fontaine's silence spoke volumes, the Haitian parallels too haunting to commit to ink. Vickery, unlocatable, offered no redemption. Lane's reply arrived terse, nervous failure secondary to profound psychic trauma, theoretical, unsignable, a hedge against certainty. The others demurred, unwilling to affix their names to speculation when truth eluded grasp. In the end, none of the 7, a constellation of expertise spanning Paris-trained exoticism to Boston's cutting-edge neurology, would endorse a cause. The certificate, filed with the parish clerk in stark simplicity, bore only undetermined. Such an admission was medical heresy, 7 trained minds, armed with texts, instruments, and decades of observation, conceding defeat to a 6-year-old's affliction. It stood as a public monument to humility, a crack in the edifice of antebellum confidence where science bowed before the unknowable, echoing Job's divine rebuke, "Where were you when I laid the earth's foundation?" The burial occurred September 18 under a sky heavy with unshed rain, in the modest cemetery on Belfontaine's outskirts, a cluster of weathered stones amid live oaks draped in Spanish moss, the river's murmur a perpetual elegy nearby. Reverend Holloway presided, his once thundering voice subdued, sermon clipped with platitudes of God's inscrutable will and mysteries beyond mortal ken. Attendance was sparse, Geesham, Landry, Dufresne standing sentinel in black, a handful of neighbors compelled by duty or lingering pity, Charlotte N.N., retrieved from their aunt's farm, clutching hands with wide-eyed bewilderment, their brother's absence a new scar on young hearts. Margaret stood rigid by the open earth, no tears, no words, breath shallow as if fearing to disturb the fragile peace. Thomas steadied her arm, his own frame gaunt from months of whiskey and worry. The grave was plain, a local stonecutter, moved by the family's destitution, carved only Daniel Carter, 1843 to 1849. No verse from Psalms, no epitaph of promise, just stark dates etching a life brief as a fever dream, yet eternal in its haunting. In the months that followed, the Carters dissolved like mist over the river at dawn. Margaret retreated fully into silence, days spent in Daniel's emptied room staring at walls that once held his stone patterns, her body wasting as if grief consumed her from within. She ceased self-care, spoke rarely, existed in a perpetual vigil for a child already gone. Thomas, broken beyond mending, abandoned ledgers forever, the cotton exchange's doors closed to him. Rent unpaid, they forfeited their modest home, retreating to Margaret's sister's single cramped room on the town's fringe, dependent on dwindling charity, meals of thin gruel and pity.
Charlotte and Anne, thrust into premature adulthood, scrubbed floors and minded infants in wealthier households, their childhood sacrificed to survival's altar.
As soon as age permitted, they fled, Charlotte to Mobile's bustling docks, wedding a shopkeeper and burying memories deep, and northward to St. Louis's growing sprawl. Neither returned to Belfontaine, nor whispered Daniel's name to their own offspring, a deliberate erasure, as if speaking him might summon the watchers anew. Thomas succumbed in 1852, consumption claimed on paper, but intimates knew, a heart shattered, spirit extinguished. Margaret lingered until 1859, outliving him by 7 hollow years, expiring in the very room where Daniel had breathed his last, her final breath a faint Daniel, as if reunion beckoned across the veil.
Geesham persisted in practice until 1863, but Daniel's shadow altered him irrevocably.
Journals shifted from clinical precision to philosophical lament, reflections on medicine's arrogance, the hubris of assuming mastery over life's enigmas.
We observe surfaces, he wrote, yet the depths, consciousness's spark, mind's tether to flesh, elude us.
Caution replaced confidence, humility supplanted certainty.
Some townsfolk deemed him timid, others, wise.
His final entry on the case, December 1849, Daniel's tragedy teaches humility.
We physicians presume understanding, truth mocks us.
Mysteries persist, perhaps meant to.
In future centuries, tools unimaginable may illuminate what we cannot.
Or perhaps some truths transcend revelation. His failure haunts me, yet perhaps his suffering sows seeds for knowledge unborn. God rest his soul, may his memory humble those who follow.
Belfontaine marched onward, yellow fever's 1850 scourge claimed dozens, economic tempests battered cotton fortunes, the Civil War storm reshaped the South, antebellum ghosts buried under Union boots.
Geesham perished in 1863 amid occupation, practice shuttered, journals crated by kin to Baton Rouge attics, dust-gathering relics. Rediscovery dawned in 1891, journals donated to the Louisiana State Medical Society, catalogued as historical curiosities. There they slumbered until the 1970s, when historian Dr. Robert Chun unearthed them amid research on antebellum enigmas.
The Carter entries stunned, meticulous bewilderment, a physician's soul laid bare.
Chen pursued shadows, Fontaine's letters in Charity Hospital archives, a 1851 journal allusion to a Louisiana paralysis, parish records confirming Undetermined. His 1977 paper, An Unexplained Pediatric Case from Antebellum Louisiana, Medical Mystery or Documentation Failure, appeared in an obscure journal, dismissed by many as neurological ignorance of the era.
Yet seeds took root.
Theories proliferated. 1984 neurologist posited acute disseminated encephalomyelitis, others viral encephalitis, Guillain-Barré, psychosomatic extremes. None captured the totality, prolonged consciousness amid paralysis, bradycardia profound, minimal sustenance survival, post-recovery personality obliteration. In 1995, psychiatrist Dr. Alicia Torres advanced extreme dissociative catatonia, trauma-induced mind-body severance, drawing parallels to modern withdrawal cases, yet Daniel's duration in physiology defied precedent. Dr. Laura Hensley, semi-retired physician captivated in 2003 by Chen's work, pursued obsession. Travels to Louisiana revealed Belfontaine subsumed into larger environs, parish and church archives yielded fragments, descendants traced Charlotte's great-great-granddaughter in Florida, ignorant of the tragedy yet granting interviews. The cemetery, now Riverside Memorial, held Daniel's weathered stone amid overgrown paths.
Most astonishing, in a Lafayette storage slated for demolition, Hensley's search uncovered Landry's boxed papers, autopsy tissue samples in glass jars, alcohol evaporated, remnants intact.
With Carter-Kin permission, LSU labs applied DNA sequencing, electron microscopy, immunohistochemistry in 2011. Results, inconclusive due to degradation, yet anomalies persisted, erratic cellular senescence, premature aging in youth, immune markers atypical, defying known pathologies. Hensley's 2011 book, The Silent Child, An Unsolved Medical Mystery, wove the tapestry, journal excerpts, physician letters, descendant voices, expert analyses. Conclusion measured, rare condition unobserved since, or confluence, environmental, genetic, psychic, infectious, yielding inexplicable storm. Daniel suffered unimaginably, his case exposes limits of 19th and 21st century medicine.
Mysteries endure in biology, defying categories. Questions linger across 175 plus years. Initial trigger? Paralysis duration? Survival mechanics? Inner experience? Personality erasure? Death's mechanism?
Theories abound: rare encephalitis, dissociative extremes, toxins, multifactorial, yet none fully satisfies.
The honest verdict, unknown. Daniel's legacy whispers humility, not physicians' incompetence, but knowledge's frontier. Gisham's cadre tried valiantly, modern tools illuminate yet falter.
The grave endures in Riverside Memorial, simple marker amid ordinary stones, no plaque of mystery, no crowds. A child's resting place, collector of river stones, watcher of mother's needle, nightmare haunted, thunder fearing.
His story endures not for resolution, but interrogation. What bounds? Body? What terrors mind in extremis? What enigmas biology conceals? Gisham's closing reflection: Daniel haunts me. No clue missed yields sense. Failure eternal. Yet perhaps his case enlightens futures. Or remains mystery's emblem, aspects transcending science, belonging to realms beyond. Humility, wonder, acceptance of unknowing, medicine's true posture. If this chronicle of shadowed suffering stirs your spirit, unknown disease, psychic fracture, or watchful beyond? Comment your theory below. Was everything revealed, or does mystery guard deeper truths?
Subscribe, ring the bell, share with mystery seekers. History's secrets await, we unearth them together.
Until next time.